a 46-member search and rescue team to aid recovery efforts in Louisiana. But what can the rest of us in Chicago do to help? Here with advice on how we can assist is Celena Roldan, CEO of the Illinois Red Cross. Hi, Celena. Welcome to Reset.
Hello, how are you? Thank you for having me.
And American Red Cross disaster response volunteer Jackie Speciale. She's a resident of suburban Woodstock who's driving down to Louisiana right now to help with recovery efforts. Hi, Jackie.
Hello.
Jackie, I want to start with you. Can you tell us what the last 48 hours has been like for you? Because you're driving one of the Red Cross's emergency response vehicles to Louisiana, right?
Yes, you are correct. I left my house with my 3 teenagers at 6 o'clock in the morning Monday and to pick up an emergency response vehicle in Rockford, and picked up my partner Marty in Bourbonnais on the way down, and we're headed to help out with the response now.
So it's a family affair.
You betcha.
You know, most of us have seen videos by this point of the devastation that's happening. Lots of fallen trees, power lines and debris, flooding. But there doesn't seem to be the amount of flooding that Louisiana saw during Katrina. So, Celena, can you give us an overview of the support that the Red Cross is providing right now?
Of course, and just so grateful that Jackie, Marty, who are heading there, just like so many hundreds of Red Cross volunteers that are already on the ground and on their way. So right now we have over 450 Red Cross workers that are on the ground and will continue to come in from across the country in the days ahead. On Monday night, more than 1,500 people sought refuge in some 38 Red Cross and community shelters across Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and Texas. So for the Red Cross, our work is just beginning, but we are focused on providing safe shelter, meals, and comfort and support for those people in need. And we know we're going to be working side by side with our partners to help people recover for the weeks and months to come.
So, Jackie, what are you being told so far? Any idea of some specifics that the Red Cross is going to be asking you to help with?
So my role specifically is I'm going to be driving an emergency response vehicle in the affected areas, primarily handing out food, water, and hearts full of emotional support for the folks that have been impacted.
Why is it important to you to do this work? Because this isn't, of course, the first time that you've done this.
It's altruistic. It completes me. It's something that I feel is important to help our neighbors. And in terms of the universe, you know, Earth is just one big neighborhood.
How did you get connected with the American Red Cross disaster group?
It's something I've always wanted to do. I always start with I'm the oldest of 5 redheads, so I've been training for disaster response my whole life. But it's really a calling.
Celena, Jackie is obviously not alone here. So do you have a head count on how many Illinois Red Cross volunteers have gone down to Louisiana to help so far?
Yes, so we have over 23 people from the Illinois region as of this morning that are in the area and supporting the response to Hurricane Ida, but really also want to thank and acknowledge all of the Illinois Red Cross volunteers that have been out and responding since the beginning of this disaster season. We currently have volunteers that are still responding to the California wildfires, to the Tennessee flooding, that just have been going above and beyond very early, an early start to this disaster season.
So 23 out, and if needed, are we prepared to send more?
We are. We have volunteers that my email is telling me that we've got folks that are going out the door today, tomorrow, and we will have people going out in the weeks and months to come.
So in addition to being CEO for the Illinois Red Cross, Celena, you're also a licensed social worker. So can you talk more about the importance of disaster mental health support and counseling?
No, absolutely. And, I have been with the Red Cross for 5 years now, and I've deployed 6 times and really have been able to see how critically important the dedicated volunteers like Jackie, like Marty are in being there. And as she described, this isn't just about the food and the water, but being able to be there on someone's very worst day. And the American Red Cross is there to tell people that they are going to be there to help them start to recover and put their lives back together. And so we understand during disaster that there is real trauma that happens. And for many individuals that Jackie and Marty are going to be helping, they were already going through recovering from a traumatic events of last year. Many people that are now encountering this disaster were impacted by Hurricane Laura and Delta last year as well. And then you also put on the overlay of COVID to that, which just makes all of these situations so much harder and more challenging for individuals, and all the more reason why the American Red Cross is so needed to be there to provide comfort, help, and support.
That's really helpful context. But help us tap in a little bit further, Celena, because it's one thing for us to see all these videos of the devastation and see folks fleeing, trying to get shelter during these disasters. But what is actually going through the mind of someone who is living this?
Well, every disaster is different, and I've responded to, hurricane responses as well as wildfires. And I think, in this moment where people are being told, you have minutes to get out and to evacuate and to just take, when you think about that, and for some of us to just know that you can literally only pack a bag, just take just the few things that you have in your home, and people talk about all of the things that are left behind that are lost forever. Many people, running for their lives, and we can't completely always understand what it means and what it feels like for someone that has encountered a wildfire, a hurricane, horrific flooding that can take lives. And then, really sitting in a space and possibly being in a shelter when you don't quite know when you're going to go back, and you may not, and you don't even know what it will look like when you go back. Those are all the kinds of stressors. Those are all the things that people are thinking in their minds at the moment. It's such a level of uncertainty that it's hard for, unless you've actually been through a disaster yourself, for people to really understand what people are going through in this moment.
This is Reset. I'm Sasha Ann Simons. If you're just tuning in, we are getting an update on the situation in New Orleans from Celena Roldan. She is CEO of the Illinois Red Cross, and also with us is suburban Woodstock resident and American Red Cross disaster response volunteer Jackie Speciale. She's driving down to Louisiana as we speak to help with recovery efforts. Now, Jackie, you talked about having been a volunteer with the Red Cross for a very long time. Tell us more about some of the emergencies that you've responded to over the years.
Sure, certainly. I've responded to regional and national different types of emergencies, from tornadoes, derecho, floods, hurricanes, wildfires, house fires, from a single-family house fire to multi-unit apartment fires, house explosion in Marengo, most recently evacuation centers from industrial fires in Morris and Rockton. Helped out at family assistance centers after a workplace violence incident in Aurora where there was loss of life, and even canteening for the services of fallen officers, Deputy Jake Keltner and Illinois State Trooper Ellis. And finally, the really important thing as well is training exercises with partner agencies so we can be prepared to work together and respond to events that happen in the future.
Yeah, speaking of preparation, I gather you're preparing differently when you're responding to a fire versus a flooding or a hurricane like this one.
What I need to bring is different as far as items, but what's in my head and heart is very similar. It's being a good listener. It's being an active listener and being there and helping people connect to the resources they need now and bridging that resources to them in the future.
Celena, we're hearing that the power might be out for weeks in New Orleans. Are they anticipating the number of people that will be seeking shelter could increase in the coming days as these power outages continue?
That is the possibility and the expectation that as power outages continue, more people will need to seek shelter. And again, as you spoke to earlier, the extreme heat will continue to make it a very, very challenging situation for individuals that have been impacted by this disaster.
So this isn't the only disaster that the American Red Cross is responding to right now. There are also those wildfires out west. So tell us the priorities right now for the Red Cross.
Sure. So, each of these disasters is a priority, and people are being impacted by disasters across the country. And so this is why our volunteer workforce is so critical, because we need to be able to be there to help communities, no matter what disaster is currently happening, whatever point they may be in the disaster, whether it's response or recovery. Clearly, a significant amount of our workforce and our focus right now is on Hurricane Ida, but we're also know that this is the very start of hurricane season, and we have several months in front of us where we're also going to have to be ready and prepared if more disasters and storms occur.
Would you say you're feeling the impacts of climate change?
The American Red Cross is a humanitarian organization, and climate change is a humanitarian crisis. And so I think we absolutely are. Every day, the American Red Cross, we see the heartbreak, as we're describing, of families and communities trying to cope with more intense storms, heavier rainfall, higher temperatures, stronger hurricanes, all of the things that we were talking about, including devastating wildfires. So there is clear evidence that climate change is occurring because these changes are resulting in more frequent and intense weather events. And the most important thing to the American Red Cross is that we are going to have to be there as these disasters happen more frequently and in intensity.
So how do we get to do what Jackie's doing? What steps would someone need to take if they wanted to be a disaster response volunteer?
Yeah, so if someone has the time, this is one of the most significant ways that you can create an impact in joining us as a Red Cross volunteer. And so right now we do have an urgent need for volunteer positions, both locally and nationally. And so you can go to redcross.org, volunteer today. And as Jackie described, the Chicagoland area also responds to 3 to 4 home fires every single day. It's the number one disaster that the American Red Cross also responds to. And home fires won't stop just because we also have volunteers that are going out to support Hurricane Ida. So we really also need people to join us as a Red Cross volunteer.
So Jackie, you're on the road now. Tell us where you are and how long you think before you make it to New Orleans.
So right now I'm actually at a truck stop outside of Carthage, Texas. And we're going to be traveling to an IRV emergency response vehicle staging area in Houston, Texas, where we'll get a orientation specific to this disaster and the important things that we need to be briefed on, as well as inspect our vehicle. And then as soon as our partner agencies like the Southern Baptist Convention and the Red Cross and local officials set up a feeding plan and specific feeding areas, we'll be ready with herbs full of food, water, and emotional support.
How do you reassure neighbors and friends, Jackie, that giving to the Red Cross is money well spent?
I think by telling the story of what we're doing and who we're doing it with would be the best answer to that question.
And folks seem receptive once you do?
Yes, very much so. A lot of times people don't know the full scope of what we do, so telling that day-to-day story of I'm here and today I'm saying goodbye to my family and my friends and my coworkers are stepping in to fill my position and they believe in this as much as I do really helps show step to step, day to day, the impacts that we have.
Yeah, I'm really glad we were able to have you on the program, even though you're traveling right now. So we really appreciate you making the time to share this story with us, for sure. Celena, for those who can't leave home and do this kind of volunteering, tell us again what we can do here locally to help and what assurances there are that the donations we make do go directly to helping the people that are impacted by Ida.
Of course. So again, we are also looking for volunteers locally, and there's so many ways that people could do and support the Red Cross mission here locally. But one of the other impactful ways people can support the American Red Cross is also by making a donation, by going to redcross.org or going to 1-800-RED-CROSS to make a donation. And every dollar counts. 90 cents of every dollar spent goes directly toward care and comfort to those affected by a disaster and would go specifically toward supporting Hurricane Ida recovery victims. And all the financial donations go to all of the things that Jackie has described, including providing food, shelter, relief supplies, emotional support, recovery planning, all of the technology warehouses and the other things that are needed, the emergency response vehicles that Jackie is currently driving across the country to ensure that we can be there to make help possible.
That is Celena Roldan. She's CEO of the Illinois Red Cross. Also with us, American Red Cross disaster response volunteer Jackie Speciale. She's traveling from Chicago down to Louisiana right now to help with recovery efforts. Safe travels, Jackie. And thanks, Celena. Thanks, Celena. Thanks, Celena.